We keep you moving to the music. MFM 92.6.
It is indeed that time for SiyakhulaLive on lunch. We do this on Wednesdays between 12:30 and 1, bringing those transformative conversations on social justice and diversity, hosted right here. It is hosted and powered by Stellenbosch University Center for the Advancement of Social Impact and Transformation, as well as the Human Resources Division. Now, together with you, our nation's most urgent conversations take center stage. Now, as we know, throughout the month of April, you and I have been journeying together on this theme of freedom, exploring its meaning and pursuit. We've looked at it in various ways. We've looked at freedom, be it through music, be it through exercising our vote, our upcoming vote in the local government elections, and holding our institutions accountable as well. And today we turn the focus to South Africa's Human Rights Commission. It is a Chapter 9 institution established under the Constitution of South Africa. It seeks to promote, protect, and monitor the realization of human rights in South Africa. So on the show today, I'm quite excited to have in conversation, and I know a couple of our colleagues are also quite excited to have Prof Tshepo Madlingozi on the line joining us in conversation. He's a scholar, a public intellectual, and commissioner of the Human Rights Commission. We're talking freedom, democracy, justice, and the Human Rights Commission in the conversation this afternoon. Prof, thank you so much for making time. Welcome to SiyakhulaLive.
Good afternoon, and thanks you for having us, and good afternoon to your listeners.
Appreciate your time. Prof, I'm going to start with a personal story. I think a lot of our listeners would also like to know, you refer to yourself a lot as a public intellectual, and I think there's a story there. So maybe let me start with that personal story, Prof, of how your personal and intellectual journey has led you to service at the Human Rights Commission.
Well, I've been a university lecturer for about 20 years now.
Yeah.
University of Pretoria, University of Witwatersrand University, but also from 2005, while teaching at the university full-time, I was also working for a social movement, the Kulumani Support Group, which is a social movement of victims of apartheid. So for about 21 years now, since 2005, I have been in both academia and also activism, so-called a activist scholar or scholar activist. But at the same time, I write a lot of op-eds for newspapers. I write a lot on social media to provoke, certain conversations. So that's why I sometimes think of myself as a public intellectual and a scholar activist.
I think we can provoke some of those thoughts as well in the conversation today, and maybe in the context of the Human Rights Commissioner. Prof, for listeners who may not be familiar, what is the role of the South African Human Rights Commission, and how does it fit into our constitutional democracy?
Yeah, it's an important question in the context of the observance of 30 years of democracy. This year we are observing 30 years of the Constitution, rather, and quite reflecting on what is the meaning of the Constitution. So the drafters of the Constitution, in their infinite wisdom, came up with this idea that you need to create certain institutions that will be independent of government, but they will not also be part of civil society, so there will be an intermediary between the state and civil society and the public to basically strengthen democracy. They'll be funded by the state, but not accountable to the state, accountable only to the public via parliament. So the Human Rights Commission is one of those institutions created in terms of Chapter 9 of the Constitution. The mandate is a very broad mandate to promote, protect, and monitor the observance of human rights. Very important mandate in the context where, number one, we come from a long history of colonialism, of slavery, of genocide, of oppression. And therefore there need to be a dedicated institution which will be solely focused on the promotion and protection of human rights. But secondly, the idea was that you'll have this commission which will be impartial, which will do its work without fear or favor, which will be a vehicle for access to justice for the most vulnerable, the most marginalized. Because, of course, you may know about your rights, you may want to go to court, but you won't have the resources to do so.
Sure.
So the commission is an institution that you can submit your complaint to, a complaint that my rights have been violated. The commission will investigate and will make a finding on your behalf. In terms of the tools, we use 3 tools. So as I said, for the power to promote, so we promote human rights by, raising awareness.
Sure.
By facilitating what we call constitutional literacy, so that people can know about their rights. Because as you know, it's one thing to have a very good constitution, but if people don't know about their rights, then it is pretty useless, to be very clear. So the promotion mandate is geared towards raising awareness of rights, how to assert your rights, and so forth. So we do a lot of webinars, a lot of seminars, a lot of workshops. We publish material. My office has just published a material on the rights of intersex children.
Okay.
Because intersex people are people who very much still marginalized, still very misunderstood.
For sure.
So that's one of the promotional activities that we do. Then we go to the monitoring mandate. The monitoring mandate, in terms of that mandate, as a commissioner, I'm allowed to visit any place, announced or unannounced, to see whether human rights have been observed.
Is it? Okay.
So that is to ensure that, on the spot, we can be able to pick out whether rights have been observed or not. One of the examples that I can give you is that every year we publish a state of school readiness report, where we go to a number of schools across the country to see whether at the beginning of the academic year, are schools ready to implement the right to education.
Sure.
So last year we went to about 150 schools, 150 schools across the country, and after that we compiled a report. What is the state of basic education?
Sure.
And from that report you find that it is really not a beautiful picture, the state of basic education. So you can see how we use our monitoring tool to publish a report. But from that monitoring, we can also then raise awareness, where we see that from the monitoring, people don't know about their rights, people don't understand their rights. So there's a relationship between monitoring and promotion. But the last mandate is to protect human rights. This is what we are known for, where people come to us with their complaints, and then we investigate and we vindicate their rights. Sometimes we investigate on our own accord, meaning where no one has come to us. Where on our own accord we have seen a violation of human rights in the media, on social media or traditional media, or where people are calling into radio shows like yours and complain about a situation.
Sure.
And then we go and investigate on our own accord. We investigate, we give both sides, victims and respondents, the right to submit their case, and then we make a finding. So that's the protection mandate. And every year we look at about 6,000 complaints that we address every year.
Sure.
Where we investigate and we make a finding. Most of our complaints come from our provinces. We've got 9 offices in all 9 provinces, and that's where the public are able to go to our offices and submit their complaints. They can also do so via WhatsApp. They can also do so on our website, but also they can also DM us on social media.
Sure. I think we'll get into those details as well. We're chatting to Professor Tshepo Madlingozi this afternoon, giving us a comprehensive layout on this institution called the Human Rights Commission. You are on SiyakhulaLive on MFM 92.6. Yes, and we still have Professor Tshepo Madlingozi on the line. Professor Tshepo is a commissioner at the Human Rights Commission. Prof, thank you for staying with us. You started to mention before our song break around, some of those pressing human rights issues that the commission is currently grappling with. You spoke about schools and the state of readiness in schools. You spoke about intersex individuals and kind of the democracy call around that. Maybe if you can give us a further picture on some of the most pressing human rights issues that the Commission is currently grappling with? And what do these reveal about the state of our democracy?
Yes, there are three categories of the rights that we, mostly get complaints about. The first category is on service delivery issues.
Mm-hmm.
And the number one there is access to clean water.
Okay.
A lot of South Africans are complaining about access to water. So water, healthcare, housing, those are the first category. That's where we get the bulk of our complaint. I would say 60% of our complaints. Then the second category has to do with equality, specifically the right to equality dealing with racial discrimination, racism. Racism is still a huge issue, and we continue to receive a lot of complaints with racism, but also homophobia, transphobia. It's a huge issue. And then also issues to do with sexism and patriarchy. So that's the second category. But in that category, we are overwhelmed with cases of hate speech.
Okay.
Hate speech in emanating from social media, but also from podcasts and social media. A lot to do with hate speech. And then lastly, a lot of issues to do with administrative action, meaning where state institutions take a decision and they don't, let people represent themselves or give their side of the story. That speaks to democracy, where decisions are made without people being able to, represent themselves. So what all of this point out to, it points to a country still grappling with deep sense of inequality, where geography, class, and race determine whether you receive services or not.
Sure. If
you are a black woman, lesbian living in the townships, your level of social economic justice or injustice, your level of safety, feeling safe, is really compromised. So that intersectional multiple access of oppression. But it also speaks to the fact that as a country, we've not done enough in terms of reconciliation, in terms of understanding that if you use the K word, you can't use a K word as a joke. You can't use it as satire. You can't use it as political speech. It's the same as the M word when it comes to, homosexuals, for example. It's the same as the C word referring to Indians and so forth and so forth. So it speaks to the fact that, diversity awareness is still a long way to go. But lastly, it speaks to issues to deal with the ability of state officials to understand their obligations. That as a state official, you are not doing a favor when you render services.
Absolutely.
When you respond to inquiries, that you are a civil servant. You are not some, person who's
volunteering their services.
Company.
Yeah.
Secondly, it speaks to issues to do with institutional capacity. A lot of the service delivery issues that we get is because of almost collapsed municipalities. That's one of our biggest challenges, that a lot of municipalities are in a state of dysfunctionality. They are unable to provide the most basic services. So state dysfunctionality or even collapse of certain municipalities, it's a huge challenge. And then of course the issue of corruption.
Yeah.
Not only diverts money that should be going to a clinic and goes to private coffers of people, money that should be going to building a school, but it also speaks to how the capturing of decision making by private actors denotes democracy, where people say, why should I vote when I know that my councillor won't listen to me? They will listen to people who are bribing them.
Sure.
So it's not only, corruption is not only a matter of socio-economic injustice. It also speaks to the diminishing of our participatory democracy.
I mean, as I'm sitting here, I'm also thinking about, our listening community, our students, but also, our Gokodla, many back home who are listening to us on the radio and thinking, do they have a part to play, Prof? As a commissioner at the Human Rights Commission, you've articulated your mandate, but I'm also left feeling like, this country is built by the people for the people. Do they have a part to play? What is their part to play?
Their part, number one, is the number one role of citizens and people who find themselves in South Africa is to know their rights. Okay. So constitutional awareness is your basic role. You must know your rights. And people always say, but, I don't have a copy of the Constitution. I don't accept that excuse. All of us have got smartphones where you can keep a PDF. You don't need a physical copy. You don't need to memorize the Constitution. I don't expect you to know what Section 10 is about, the right to dignity, or Section 11, the right to life. I don't expect you to, say like I'm saying it now, but to be able at any time to be able to consult your Constitution. So the first role to play is constitutional literacy. You must be literate yourself in terms of what does the Constitution say. Secondly, the second role is a civic duty. Civic duty means the role to be an active citizen. A lot of South Africans and people who find themselves in South Africa think they can privatize their life. I'll have private school, I'll have private healthcare, I'll even have solar system to provide my electricity
and be
for
off
myself.
The grid. I give that's
and
the word.
Be off the grid, in all areas, and therefore I don't worry whether the state is collapsed or not. That is not true. When things go pear-shaped, all of us are going to be affected.
Prof, can I just pause there before you go? Because I think you're touching on this kind of thing of like Ubuntu. When you're saying, it just because you can be off the grid doesn't mean you are unaffected by what is happening in the rest of the country. So maybe as you are, talking about it, just to also bring this philosophy or this ethos as well, is, to what extent do you think, an ethos like Ubuntu shapes the Human Rights Commission approach to justice, to dignity and accountability?
Next week, my office is releasing a series of pamphlets and a poster called Rights and Responsibilities. And as you can hear from the name, that campaign seeks to educate people that while you have rights, you also have responsibilities.
Absolutely.
And we do so because there is a very Western, Eurocentric understanding of rights, which is very individualized. I've got entitlements against the state. I've got entitlements against other people. But what are your responsibilities in society? So this campaign that will be releasing next week, starting with high schools and primary schools, speaks to this notion of responsibilities. So that's number one. Number two, an African understanding of human rights emphasizes the idea of interdependence. We are interdependent with one another, not only with one another, but also with non-human beings, plants and animals. We are also interdependent. So that's an Ubuntu understanding of rights, to say, even though as Tshepo, I can afford to take my child to a private school, but I've got a responsibility to understand that I live in a country where a lot of people are unable to do so, not because they are lazy, not because they are not smart, but because there are no jobs, because there are no opportunities. But not only that, because there is intergenerational privilege and intergenerational impoverishment, poverty.
Sure.
And therefore, those of us who intergenerationally have been privileged, what is your responsibility? When you have benefited from colonialism, you have benefited from apartheid, what is your responsibility in this country? But also those of us who are the new rich, what are our responsibilities? So Ubuntu plays a very central role. That's why last year we released a campaign called, promoting a culture of human rights through the resolution of the national question, promoting a culture of human rights through the resolution of the national question. At the heart of systemic human rights violation is the fact that we have not resolved the national question. We are not a nation yet in South Africa.
Okay.
You know, we're only a nation when Bafana Bafana wins or when the Springbok wins. And then after that, we're no longer stronger together. You go to your shack, I go to my mansion.
Yo, Prof, eh?
Without being a nation, we don't have shared values. Without having shared values, we cannot come up with a social compact. Who are we? And also, therefore, you know, the tagline of that campaign is, you know, there's no culture of human rights without a universal sense of belonging.
Okay.
How do we make people feel a sense of belonging? Both affectively, meaning a feeling that I belong. I feel that I'm not an outsider to this country.
Yeah.
But also materially, you know, in the past, we used to emphasize the idea that all of us must feel proud to be South African. You can't say that I must be proud to be South African when I don't share in the resources of the country. That's a kumbaya notion of social cohesion, and it's very unfair for people to feel South African when they don't share in the resources of the country. So Ubuntu emphasizes two notions. One, truth. What is the truth about the haves and the have-nots? Two, Ubuntu emphasizes the notion of justice. How do we redistribute resources so that we all of us share? But three, Ubuntu says that even as we redistribute, even as we redress, don't do so in a way that makes other people feel ashamed just because they benefited from the past.
Sure.
How do you bring them in a way that is productive, generative, but also that is meant to build, not where you are, you know, making people feel ashamed because they are white, you know, in our case, for example. How do we build a country where everyone understand that all of us have got a stake in this country? The last point that I would make is that in 2021, there were unrest in Gauteng and in KwaZulu-Natal. Now, of course, the spark was the arrest of the former president. But if you look at a lot of people who went to the shops to loot and to steal from the malls and so forth, it wasn't because they were defending the president.
President.
They were going there because they were hungry.
Yeah.
People were stealing baby formula. People were stealing bread. People were very hungry. But we also say that in a case where there's so much impoverishment and poverty, where people don't feel that they have a stake in the country, it's easy to mobilize those people to create unrest. So privatizing your life will not help us when we have the next condition or the next unrest. There is an unrest coming up because there's a lot of dissatisfaction.
Sure.
You can hear this notion of Afrophobia that I call Afrophobia. You know, we start as legitimate concerns about, you know,
service delivery and
but, you know, people are easily mobilized to beat up people. People are easily mobilized to destroy people's shops.
Sure.
Because those people are not working. They're just lying at sitting at home, and it's easy to mobilize them. So
and it's just,
Ubuntu says, let's share so that we can stabilize this economy, we can stabilize this country.
Prof, we are hearing you so loud and clear, and I think that, you know, this is, you know, one of those shows that we really need to actually have as part of an installation, because I think so many people have listened to your message, and I think there's more to listen to. But Prof, I want to maybe, before I let you do, just ask you to give us the context of where people can locate their Human Rights Commission. I know information's out there on Google, but how can someone, how do they locate the Human Rights Commission if there's something that they want to talk about?
Yes, so even though our headquarters are here in Johannesburg, we've got offices in all the 9 provinces. In the Western Cape, we are in Cape Town on Long Street, you know, easy to find us. And then, so all the provinces have got national offices.
Okay.
But we know it's very difficult for people to travel to the capital city.
Sure.
So you can also find us on WhatsApp. You can also find us on online, where you can submit your complaint. We've also made the complaint in all languages. We've made it children easy for children to also submit their complaint. And then lastly, we are on all social media platforms where people can DM us and can get in touch with us.
Okay, that is the Human Rights Commission on the internet, fairly easy to find as well. Thank you so much, Prof Tshepo Madlingozi, Commissioner of the Human Rights Commission, for chatting to us this afternoon. I hope we can do this again sometime soon.
Thank you. I look forward to it.
We keep you moving to the music. MFM 92.6.